It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hey, I'd like to welcome back to the program, and it's been a while. We've got a retired teacher on the program. Gayla Bailey is with us. Gayla, it's been too long. Thanks for coming back on the program.
You are so welcome. Nice to talk to you.
Yeah, so Gayla, I wanted to have you on the program because I have noticed that there has been, I guess, maybe a resurgence in people discussing school choice. And so I wanted to talk with you. You're a retired teacher about this concept of school choice. What are your thoughts about giving parents and students more choices when it comes to their education?
Well, it all comes down to the Bill of Rights. Amendment 9 in the Bill of Rights says that as Americans, we have freedom of choice. And if that holds true today, then parents, who are the primary responsible people for their children, should be able to choose their child's education. So it just comes down to the basic freedoms that we have as Americans.
I think that certainly sums it up. Matter of fact, that also applies to our healthcare choices. We were just talking about that last hour, but that's another subject. But yeah, I certainly agree with that. Well, so I guess how do you feel like teachers feel now? And the reason I say this is because there are primaries going around, and some people who are, for example, Republicans, they oppose school choice. Others didn't. Others were for school choice. It is a key plank in the Republican Party platform, but there is kind of a notion out there that maybe some teachers are not for school choice. Is that true, or is that not true, or does it depend where you are in the state?
Okay, it definitely depends on where you are. It's just like when we talk about school choice, you have to go back to, we used to call it school vouchers. It's been around for a long time, and both political parties have been on the side of it or against it, depending on where and when. But I think that a lot of school teachers in very large school districts are more likely to oppose school choice because they feel like that it's taking tax monies out of the public school system. The way school choice works, I mean, there are so many facets of school choice that you have to look at. And then the ultimate bottom line is, well, what's best for my child? And in Arkansas, we do have an open enrollment situation where if you feel like your child would be better served in a smaller school district, say, that a person could move from a larger school district to a smaller school district to meet the needs, and vice versa. If a child wants to be part of a magnet program or an E-STEM school, then they could transfer into a larger school district. And this just gives the parents a choice and the children a choice of where they're going to get their education. Charter schools, big. Magnet schools, big. Both receive public funding, which is just like a public school, except they're run in a slightly different way. So when you look at the overall situation of school choice, you have to look at a lot of variables.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's, a given that any time you have maybe a sedentary system, if somebody comes up with new ideas that maybe, and the goal is to actually help the educational process, make it better. And you got to do that with different ideas, and you got to kind of be able to break out of the mold to do that. And that, of course, costs money. And I think that's what makes some people in the traditional public school system, they get nervous. I also think, though, and we saw this in Arkansas when Jim Dotson, Representative Dotson, tried to pass a very simple school choice bill. It was very simple, and yet there was misinformation being circulated by a lot of superintendents across the state. In some cases, I got reports back from legislators that said that they openly admitted they didn't even read the bill before they started telling their teachers or their principals. And then, of course, the principals filter into the teachers' lounge. And then you have these teachers that have what is really misinformation. And it's almost, I know we don't have unions here in Arkansas teachers unions per se like they do in other places, but it does kind of feel like there's maybe a unofficial one. What are your thoughts, Gayla? And feel free to disagree with me. I mean, I'm not throwing all teachers under the bus here. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of this.
Right. Well, we have AEA, and they are obviously for the public school teacher and are going to side with public schools. And as a public school teacher for 37 years, I am a public school supporter. I believe in public education. I feel like that students can get a good education in public schools. But I'm talking about when you look at school choice, you're talking about the students who might not be thriving, the students who might need a different direction. A lot of decisions have to be made when a parent determines whether or not to keep their child in a public school or not. And the whole purpose of school choice is that parents should be able to choose. I think that a lot of teachers, especially who are employed, would not just come right out and say, yeah, sure, I'm for school choice, because, that's going against their public education job. But, again, it comes down to the many variables in place that have to be considered when it comes to choosing what's best for your child.
Do you still keep in touch with some, teachers that you used to work with?
Oh, yeah.
Is it a mixed bag on opinion on school choice, or do they support it, or what are their thoughts on it?
Okay. Well, again, I'm a different situation because of where I live. The very conservative area, very very cohesive area, and I would say that most of the people that I am still in contact with are probably supportive of school choice. I know a few of them specifically are. And I still think, that when you look at the big picture, it's that freedom of choice. We have, the thing that you have to look at is we should be looking at what's best for the student. And if you have, let's say, a smaller school district with smaller classroom size, with fewer activities even, for a student that just prefers not to be involved in everything, then parents should be able to send their child to that school. Or if they want specific teaching for their child, like if they want, like a magnet school, if they want their child to be focused in science, then why shouldn't parents be allowed to have their child go to that school?
Yeah, I think you're right, and it's good to hear, because I know there are teachers that want school choice. I think there's a perception that maybe not necessarily true, where they're trying to say, well, no, teachers don't want school choice. I think regardless though of how teachers feel on the subject, when it comes down to it, eventually we get to vote for people that support policies in a democratic way, and there are way more parents than there are teachers per se, and I think the majority of Arkansans, and that's why you mentioned it used to be a bipartisan issue. I mean, there have been many Democrats that have supported the concept of school choice, because we want people who maybe are economically disadvantaged to have the freedom of choice to maybe go to a school that, like you said, is offering programs that they want to participate in, and that's not a bad thing. But somehow it's getting construed that choice is a bad thing, just like we can't buy health insurance across county lines or across state lines, and it's we're told choice is a bad thing, and choice isn't a bad thing. And Gayla, you as a teacher, you taught the U.S. Constitution to students for a long time, didn't you?
Yes, that's what I taught all 37 years of my teaching, and I think that it's one of those subjects where you have to look at, again, specific situations. Different states are going to have different views. In Arkansas, when we're ranked as low as we're ranked in the hierarchy of education, And when we have so many school districts that are struggling, when you look at the grades that the State Department's putting out for different schools and what grades they're making, it seems to me like we should be supporting anything that would better the educational quality for our students. When you have a public school system, and this is one of those things that, people don't understand the whole big picture, I think, sometimes, because teachers some teachers haven't gotten a raise in years. People aren't going into teaching because of they can make a whole lot more money someplace else. And people say, well, why are we putting so much money in public schools? But you still want the most qualified teachers. You want your public education system to be top notch. And if we have to have school choice to push other systems to improve, then I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. In a charter school, if they don't have a good record and if their students aren't meeting standards and if parents aren't happy with how their children are being educated, then they pull their student. You don't have that opportunity in a public school.
Yeah, and that's the word too. That you finished the sentence with opportunity. That's the operative word there, and that's what we want. And it's a reason it's a key plank of the Republican platform. And I think everybody can agree that this is an effort to have the child first in mind and focus on the educational needs of the child. And that you've mentioned, public school has that in mind. They're attempting to do that, but maybe there are other ideas that we can consider outside of the status quo. And that's what school choice represents. It represents needed reform. And by giving people more choice, you're actually kind of depending on a free market principle, where if you give people more choice, the schools that are doing the things that maybe work better or are better ideas, maybe then that catches on to everywhere else. But we've got to have some kind of freedom in order to allow that experiment to take place. And Gayla Bailey, I'll give you the last word.
I think that what you just said was excellent. That is exactly what is going to improve education. You take what's working and you take what's good and then you incorporate it. And public schools try. Again, you're talking about big versus smaller. And anytime you have a big situation like big government or small government or big schools versus small schools, you have a situation where it takes longer to move the big and the small can achieve more quickly. With schools, I think that we always have to work to benefit the students. I don't think there's a one answer for anything. I think that we should look at the individual student and do what is absolutely best for all students. And if that's removing your child from a public school to go into a charter school or a magnet school or even homeschool, then that should be the choice of the parent.
I completely agree. Gayla Bailey calling in from Pope County. Appreciate it so much. It's a pleasure to talk to you again.
You too. Thank you very much.
All righty. Have a great morning. Folks, we're going to take a break. You're listening to Conduit News Radio. Back in just a moment.